Hello, and welcome to my session. My name is Victor Lee, and I'm an associate professor in the Graduate School of Education at Stanford University. And I'll be talking with you today about words and numbers, data learning opportunities in the context of English language arts instruction. Following my presentation, I'll be responding to your questions in the chat space for live Q&A. Now, let's get started. First, let me ask the question, why are we interested in data? It's turning out that data fluency is becoming a necessary set of skills to develop, but it's also a very challenging set of skills to develop. Now, when I say it's necessary, what are some of the signs of that's happening? Data science education has moved from a topic that people have talked about into a reality for our K-12 school system. We are now awash with data. We are having whole new areas of research developing around a field called data science. We're having new majors appear around data science. And as I said before, we're having K-12 curriculum starting to really pay attention to data science. We've seen the development of Data Science for Everyone as an advocacy organization. We've seen the Data Science and Literacy Act of 2023 as legislation that has been prepared for review. We've had activities from IES for catalyzing a new field, data science education in K-12, and the National Academies of Science, Engineering, and Medicine had convened a workshop on the foundations of data science for students in grades K through 12. Now, while it is really important that we work towards supporting data science, we should also recognize that there's many years of research that have told us where are some of the challenges that students encounter learning about data. Included among these are some of the difficulties students have with core concepts related to variability, distribution, measures of center, sampling, reading graphs, and data visualizations. What we do know, however, is that some of the most promising approaches to strengthen student proficiency with data is to work with data that are familiar. That begs the question, where might we encounter data in our everyday lives? We're starting to see a lot of examples appearing in everyday life. Some of this is happening in the news media, such as on the left here, the New York Times, what's going on in this graph. We are seeing it with wearable technologies that is recording information about our health and our activity and our heart rates. We see it in the supermarket by participating in use of loyalty club cards for discounts and coupons, which are helping to maintain profiles of our purchases. We're seeing it also in screen time and other sorts of app monitoring systems that are presenting graphs and information about some of our habits that we may not realize that we are participating in. Many of these have a lot of promise to them, but they're not necessarily part of the day-to-day reality of a K-12 student. So is there a way to find connection points for K-12 students with data, especially in ways that could align with other instructional goals that they must fulfill as part of their school experience? I would say yes. Text as data is a real possibility. By that, I mean taking canonical readings, literature, other forms of writing, and using those and the words within them as data sources for students to examine. Here are some examples that are appearing already within the professional and public realm. From the pudding, you can see in the middle a data journalism project that looks at how different words are used to describe eyes when the character is referred to as a woman or as a man. And you can see some of the differences in the ways in which those words are appearing and are used. On the right, you can see Google's Ngram viewer, which has a plot of the use of the word love as it appears in a text data corpus, books from the 1800s up until the recent 2000s. Now, why are these interesting specimens to consider? This is part of the larger movement of using text as data. And as part of the humanities, this is providing commentary and additional sources for us to critically examine where we are and how we've progressed culturally through the use of words and language. And this entire premise that text can be a powerful source of data and a means by which students can learn to work with data is the entire premise of a 3-year funded project from the National Science Foundation that I'm leading with my colleagues Sarah Levine and Dora Dembski, also at Stanford University. We refer to this project as ELA Lytics, English Language Arts Lytics. And it focuses heavily on the use of text as data and data visualizations. Now, what we're looking at here is a situation on the right where in English language arts, we're very much focused on supporting students in developing textual literacy proficiencies. But as I've been speaking so far, we're focusing also on building students' data literacy proficiencies. There is a potential relationship here that we can actually leverage in which both of these are mutually supportive of one another. With textual literacy for students who are comfortable engaging with literature and the written word, understanding what is happening in a given description or writing helps provide background and context. And if that individual student is less comfortable working with data formalisms and data visualizations, that provides background knowledge and familiarity to support interpretation of new data visualizations. Also, it supports the ability to critique data visualizations, because sometimes some of the most important things that appear in writing are not necessarily the same things that appear with the greatest frequency. For example, important characters in a book may have very few appearances, but have important relationships and consequences to other characters in the book. Looking in the other direction, data literacy can be a source of comprehension resources for students who are less comfortable with their English language arts learning experiences. For example, students who feel more comfortable with mathematics, graphs, and other symbols, but maybe struggling with trying to understand complexities of metaphor and plot, now have visualizations that can show some of the things that are key features within that text to help them to recognize what are some of the other potentially important word usages or characters or literary devices involved. This can provide a pathway then for students to develop a richer understanding of literary concepts such as authorial style and language use. So here we conceptualize this potential intersection of textual literacy and data literacy as being mutually supportive. Now, to execute this so that we can make this a real vision and really viable in schools, we begin with the process of co-design. Co-design is a practice that is emerging in the education, research, and learning sciences communities in which researchers and educational practitioners, in this case, middle school English language arts classroom teachers, and district coordinators and leads for the respective curriculum areas, meet together over a period of several months to develop the ideas, plan out the instruction, and build out the resources that could be used in the classroom. Some examples that have come up through these co-design sessions are the use of word clouds as showing the frequency and prominence of different words that are appearing within a text or a portion of text, bar graphs that can also show with greater precision and specific numerical values associated with frequency and prominence, and line graphs, which are great at showing temporal information and things that take place as changes over time across a lengthy text. What we're seeing here are ideas for supporting comprehension, also supporting parts of speech recognition, and also language skills for multilingual students who are still developing in their English language proficiency, but have rich proficiencies in a different language. What would this look like? To illustrate this, I'm going to show an example that has been discussed and examined in depth through our co-design sessions. On the left, you'll see a copy of the book Summer of the Mariposas by Guadalupe Garcia Macall. This is an award-winning chapter book that follows the same overall storyline as Homer's Odyssey. Now you can see here some potential word visualizations and text visualizations that were co-constructed over the course of the 7 co-design sessions. As one example, the Summer of the Mariposas translates to Summer of the Butterflies, butterfly and mariposa being the same word. Here we have a visualization where the book is separated into 3 major sections: part 1, the departure, part 2, the initiation, and part 3, the return. And we can see where the frequency of butterfly or mariposa, because this book moves between English and Spanish words, appears over time. And this provides a means for the class to go back and re-examine where butterflies appearing in the story. Why are the butterflies appearing in that story? For those of you who are interested, butterflies can be seen as a symbol of metamorphosis and change and growth amongst the main characters, but also within Aztec culture, which is a key part of the ancestry and story, butterflies are a big part of moving to the spirit world. On the right, we have an example of a word cloud distinctive word visualization based on relative frequency of keywords. This is from chapter 9 of Summer of the Mariposas, titled La Araña, the Spider. Now, for those of you who are familiar with the Odyssey, you may recall there's a portion with sirens who lure with their singing and hypnotize the characters such that they are helpless and trapped. Well, in Summer of the Mariposas, there is a character who hypnotizes and traps the protagonist and her sisters with sweets and baked goods in a warm, cozy house to keep them locked there forever. You will also see, in addition to words referring to baking and sweet, are the witch and Llorona, both of whom are important characters in here. So, for a student who is just beginning to get to this chapter, this offers a conversation point for the class to discuss what do you think is going to happen? What do you think are words that are surprising that will be important in this book? This can also be used as a retrospective activity to discuss why are some things appearing prominently and what were those things symbolizing and who related to what word in this when considering both characters and other nouns, adjectives, and verbs. Another example, and to discuss some of the routines and activities that we're designing to use with data in English Language Arts classroom, comes from another unit with our partner school district. This involves Greek mythologies, and specifically the example I show here, represented on the left, is Prometheus, he who stole fire from the gods and brought it to mankind. On the right, you will see some of the most frequent words represented in bar graph form, both in English and in Spanish, and separated by parts of speech. Because this school district has a number of multilingual students, some of whom have different levels of fluency in different languages, having multiple representations of the same words and seeing their relative frequency provides additional resources for students to understand what is new vocabulary and what of the new vocabulary is likely to appear often in the text. With respect to routines and activities, aside from presenting these or working with students to co-construct these, teachers can pose to students a range of questions or activities or tasks that will only take a few minutes in the classroom, but be supportive of both data skills and textual literacy skills. For example, a question a teacher could ask is, what's missing in these visualizations? We see several words, but clearly the book or the story has more words than are represented here currently. In addition to not having all words shown, are there key things that are relevant to the story that the students resonated with or recognized in the process of reading it that they do not see represented in these visualizations? This is an important conversation to have about data, because all data represent a series of choices and can only include some things and will exclude other things. Supporting students in making that connection and that realization is a key component of data acumen and sophistication that we're hoping to develop in the next generation of data scientists. Another activity teachers could put forward to students is predict the plot and explain why you think that could be the plot using the visualization. Here, with the separation in parts of speech, you could identify some of the key nouns and potential actors. You could identify some of the key verbs to see if it involves conflict or harmony or other forms of activity such as communication or exchange, and form different ways of describing what might this book be about, making some predictions and helping to build curiosity and support further investigation of the text upon reading. Other activities in English Language Arts class, a structure known as sentence frames, so incomplete sentences that have select blank spots that need to be filled in by the students own contributions can be used with word visualizations like this. And this can help make visible what are some of the most prominent words that students are seeing in the text. And they can also debate whether it's the most appropriate to pick the ones that appear the most or pick amongst many that appear frequently. Other activities that are aligned with English language arts goals may be identifying words most associated with specific characters or specific segments of the reading. This is a 3-year project that I have described funded by the National Science Foundation, and we are only partway through the first year. The work we have done so far has been the co-design work over several months. What we will be doing in the fall and over the next 2 years is classroom implementations of these activities with continued refinement, always with an eye towards what works for the classroom with these teachers and the student population that they are supporting. However, we do have questions about, will this be accessible and appropriate for middle school students? I show here an excerpt from one interview we have been completing and analyzing over the past few months with a 6th grade student. In this interview, this student, whom we'll call Veronica, has been looking at a visualization of L. Frank Baum's Wizard of Oz, the original text. This is not a book that this individual student has read before, although she is generally familiar with the story and some of the references to it. Now, when seeing this visualization shown here on the bottom left, showing the frequency of the word Dorothy, witch, and wizard across the 25 chapters of the book, Veronica is able to immediately interpret this and say, I can definitely tell that in chapters 10 to 15 that like witch is mentioned a lot. And then wizard seems to be like, not like too much mention, but it is like there through the like story. And then Dorothy is like pretty high on each one of the chapters. I guess the main part where all 3 things are mentioned the most should be in between chapters 10 to 15. Our interviewer, Dorna, comments, great noticings. So what would you then wonder based on all the things you've noticed? Veronica, I wonder why the witch was mentioned so much in chapters 10 to 15. And not like as much in the others. And I wonder why the wizard wasn't mentioned too much either. So as you can see here, with the 6th grade student coming from the school district where we are working, she is able to recognize some of the key locations along the x-axis, recognize some of the changes in graphs, and begin to speculate why some of these things are appearing and make some predictions about how different characters will appear at different times in the book. We will be continuing to pursue further lines of inquiry and more in-depth studies of student learning before and after some of this text analytics visualization design and research. But this does give us some strong indications that this can be an accessible and useful set of activities for students of this age. To summarize this overall approach, what we're doing is providing an illustration of some supportive steps that we, as educators and researchers, can take to move toward data science education in the disciplines. This is an idea that data literacy and data science need not be encountered and covered only in math class or only in the computer science class, but rather its connections and relevance and impact in the way in which knowledge is built in disciplines as varied as the humanities and the arts and sciences and the social sciences are all relevant and have their own distinct character. And those are times and spaces in which we can support data fluency and data science education. I do want to iterate that our goal here is not to transform English language arts class into math class, but rather we're looking to build reciprocal relationships where meaning making and a critical eye based on whatever sets of resources are most comfortable for students can be leveraged to support literacy in a domain that may be less comfortable. This has the potential of opening up more STEM pathways and mathematics pathways for students who may not have already pursued or felt comfortable with mathematics or STEM. In addition, this may support a more critical humanistic perspective and humanities lens on data for students who are comfortable with data representations, data literacy, and STEM topics. we would maintain that both sets of directions, pathways, and future developments are urgently needed. This approach that we've been taking also serves to increase the number of meaning-making resources that are available to students, so that beyond having prose, we now have other ways of showing and visualizing what is happening in a story. Visualizations that show parts and pieces, but can altogether be clues and tools for students to understand and relate to text and ask critical questions related to their comprehension of the text itself or the larger world or culture to which that text refers. And this approach is deliberately grounded in classroom practice and needs by working with co-design, with teachers, and in schools with actual situations and actual texts. We have discovered that some of the texts that are used in middle school language arts have a very different quality with respect to how digital humanities have used larger, longer standing, lengthier texts that have been analyzed and published about. Why else might we care about taking on an approach like this? Well, first, thinking about preparation, both for future life and work. We want students, as they become older and informed and engaging with all forms of media, to be comfortable with all forms of data visualization. We are continuously seeing new forms of data visualization, such as this one on the far left from the Wall Street Journal in 2013, appearing in news and commentaries. In this particular visualization, this one is showing the rapid increase in statistics, studies, and pursuits as majors and concentrations, as well as in advanced placement tests. What is notable about this is that this visualization came from 2013, early in the movement to formalize data science as its own field of undergraduate and graduate study. So we can already see the increase that is happening. Now, by using an approach that relates to students who have engaged more comfortably with the humanities or English language arts, we can build more pathways. So that way, students who have not already been on a path that has set them up to take an advanced placement test in statistics are gaining the proficiencies and skills through content and topics that are meaningful and relevant to their interests. Another area of interest is in natural language processing. Many uses of apps and technologies are relying on the transformation of words into data that can then be used to train new systems and infer meaning. That example in the middle shows a representation of how words are identified and connected to other words within a training sample to be used as part of a machine learning system. And on the far right, we see an example of ChatGPT, a large language model-based artificial intelligence chatbot system that leverages developments in the processing and analysis of language to develop responses that appear very human-like with respect to what the user types and requests as a prompt. As we look forward, we can expect more developments to happen, both in the way that data are integrated into our encounters with daily life and with the new forms of technology and industry and scientific advancement that look at language and understand the complexities of it and generate new powerful applications, businesses, and services. To conclude, I would be remiss to not formally acknowledge my outstanding colleagues on the ELA Lytics project, including my co-PIs, Dr. Sarah Levine and Dr. Dora Dembski, and an outstanding array of students, including Dorna Abdi, Raquel Cuello, Deepak Dennison, Arnav Gupta, Gina Zhang, and an outstanding staff support member, Christine Bywater. I would also like to thank our collaborating school district, especially the district leads and middle school English language arts teachers who will not be identified at this time, although our thanks to them is expressed very strongly and profusely, and to the National Science Foundation for providing funding for us to further develop this space and support this work. We encourage you to follow some of our activities as more findings come in the future. Thank you. I can speak more to some of the activities that are currently ongoing. We are currently working with several ELA teachers, and the project has begun with the academic school year, and are seeing a lot of opportunities with respect to analog data representation. So things that can be done without the computer to start, such as using post-it notes or magnets strategically, and using that as ways to, for example, find themes in text and see where people locate things in there. We are also exploring new forms of sentiment analysis and other emotion features and characteristics that students are available in there. I see that one question has come up, and so I can respond to that. So I would be very happy to share whatever documents I can that are not already provided by way of NCES's Summit platform. I do believe some of this will be available asynchronously in the future, but you can contact me at my email address, which I will type in the chat here. And I'll be happy to share whatever I can, given some of and where we have any privacy stipulations with respect to our human subjects research committee. I would be definitely interested to see if there are any audience members here who think that this might be something that they would talk about with respect to their schools or curriculum leads or in their classrooms as an idea to entertain, and what might that conversation look like. I will say some of the challenges and reasons that motivate the analog data representations has to do with when and how computers are being distributed during the school year, and also sets of favorite activities that the most smooth engagement with data would be to stick with some of the media, such as print books that teachers already have in their collections at the initial portion of the year, although we do have a lot of enthusiasm with respect to the transition now that the Chromebooks have been distributed, and specialized apps that we've developed to be able to build representations of any text that's available within the larger Google Books collection. One of the other things that we're emphasizing and seeing a lot of teacher interest in is in students' self-reflection of text. And so we're currently devising some activities and routines with reaction cards that students can then place with respect to how villainous they think a character is, or what they think most represents or embodies anger from the text, and using the entire collection as students all raise their cards or collect them into a pile to see where there's larger tendencies and differences in interpretation, so that way people can look at variability and also tendencies and majorities. I do see that we have, at least from the view I'm able to access, a number of practicing K-12 educators who've attended, and I would love to take this opportunity to just say thank you for the amazing work you're doing. And I think it's a very challenging time for educators across the country for a multitude of reasons. And I think you are very much the unsung heroes who have continued doing the work for youth and communities. So I am just grateful as a parent and as an education researcher and collaborator. Well, as educators, I think we all know that even those who are not actively speaking during the class are thinking deeply and engaging with the material. So I thank you all very much for your time. My email address is available in the chat. It's vrlee, so Lee, at stanford.edu. Our work will be continuing and improving further, and we've gotten a lot of really exciting responses from students and teachers, both within our project and beyond. And we look forward to making more of the resources and tools we develop publicly available for broader use. So I wish you all a great afternoon. And thank you so much.